Hi, everyone. It is an episode of Help Me Be Me. This is Sarah, and I'm doing an episode called I'm a Failure. It is a mindset reset. That's the best way I can describe it. And it's really about just all of the things that our brain does. I'm ugly. I should be farther by now. I'm a terrible mother. My relevance is over. I'm old. All of these thoughts are so normal. They're so average. Everyone has them. And you can quite literally start thinking anything repeatedly, and you will start to see it as true. There's no such thing as true or not true, only what you experience through your own lens, through your own mind's eye. And the way that our brain works is by comparison, constant comparison. It's a calculator. It's constantly calculating threat. I'm above this person. I'm below this person. That person's higher than me. That person's lower than me. I'm over here in this scale. I'm below on this scale. It's a constant equation. And that definition, whatever we see in our mind, is always changing and it's always fluid. It can change on a dime. It can change based on any number of factors. If you've slept, if you've eaten, how much you've eaten, what you've eaten, what day of your cycle you're on, what the weather is like outside, what time of year it is, what the economy is doing, what your friend group is projecting on social media, in their energy. All of these things affect the calculator. And the moment your brain has a blip of a thought, I'm a failure, there's a choice to be made. You can either follow the feeling and invest in it just like a script, like you're an actor in a play, or you can look at it, step back from it, see it as an electrical impulse that's just bloop, happening in your brain, and assume a state of non-attachment. So in that very moment, the thought occurs, I want you to ask yourself, what if the opposite is true? Or just even notice the thought itself and observe it as this little energetic entity. Don't attach to it. Don't follow it to the next thought and the next thought and the next thought. Don't take on the script of the actor in the play. Just step back and bring back a sense of trust and openness in your body, resuming a feeling of faith, relaxation, and just neutrality. That's why I always say we ask, what if the opposite was true? And literally try and imagine it. I want you to try that right now in your body. Imagine openness, imagine neutrality. So, this episode is all about escaping from a thought prison, whatever yours is, and knowing that that can activate a series of future beliefs. Like just like the script, you're reading off the next belief that follows, that's connected to the next feeling, that catalyzes the next belief, that catalyzes the next perspective. And I hope that this episode can help you in that area. I want to ask, have you seen around your thoughts yet? Because that is the goal, to be able to see around them, to not be identified with them, to be able to see them as things occurring in our computer. Because what happens is when you have a thought, a good thought or a bad thought, we will practice them and ruminate. And rumination is what I think creates everyone's sense of reality. It is like putting on a record, like a vinyl record, and it just plays out all of the feelings and the actions and the perspectives that create our life. So the next feeling you have relates to the next action you take, relates to the way you respond to the next person you see. It creates life. And a lot of these records that we play are old. They're repeats. We've picked them up and they were born of a different time, of a different self, of a feeling of powerlessness. They're all marked in prior feelings of pain or fear. And what we can't see is that it's really a trick. The thought itself is a trick, it's a ruse. And at any moment, you have the option to jump aside and choose a different memory of being. But the first step is to just notice that you have a choice. Notice that you have agency to sidestep it. You don't have to engage with it. Our goal is to resume energetic neutrality and openness. So if you're saying to yourself, but I can't stop, I really do think these things, then you are lost in the content. And by that, I mean, you're lost in the material of the script. You're lost in the words, the thoughts themselves. And your job is to step back, to learn how to step back and see the thought as it occurs. See it as this little electrical blip in the circuit board of your brain. And we don't have to engage with all of our thoughts. We don't have to engage with the content. We can watch so many thoughts like little muscle spasms, and they go so fast. They're so fluid. They're like a little bit non sequitur. Let's try it right now. Let's witness the diverse tangents that populate your brain. Just a moment of silence. See the like textured dappled light behind your eyelids. What are the thoughts that come in? Just notice what they are. They might be naming things that you hear around you. They might be like to-do lists of the things you have yet to do. They might be commentary on what you're feeling or thinking right now. There's so many. They're happening constantly. And all of them are tied to a bajillion different things in your life. Energy has a big effect on the ones that you have, the amount you've slept, the amount of stress in your body, in your schedule, in your life has a huge effect on the intensity of the thoughts and your ability to kind of disengage from them. Before I go deeper into this episode, I just wanted to offer you a very light reflection. I just want you to observe, ask yourself, how are you relating to your life? Are you feeling above it or are you feeling below it? I just want you to tune in and ask, am I above the line or am I below the line today, right now? And if you are feeling below the line, and by that I mean like underfoot, on the back foot, feeling like you can't feel balanced or on top of things, feeling like energetically you're a victim versus conquering, owning, like coming from a full cup, I want you to ask, how can I come back above it? What tweaks do I need to make today to move through my day feeling above the line? And what alterations can you make right now? Sometimes that means like not calling in sick, but saying, I need to block out an hour for myself. Allow yourself to do that, whatever it is. Block out some time for just silence, nothingness, openness, rest, being able to unplug, being able to slow down, take a drink of water, sit outside, stare at nothing, whatever it is. If you are feeling like you have no time, you have no flexibility, that is a sign that you need some meditation in your life. I know that sounds like hokey, but it's literally true. We need to have mental space and silence. And so if you have not had that in a very long time, block out some time just for nothingness, for silence. What happens is if you are in that place of put upon, catching up constantly, rushing, when you make a very small effort and set some clean, precise boundaries around 30 minutes for yourself, an hour for yourself, take stuff off of your itinerary, off of your schedule. Life responds, life opens up for us. But we have to ask for that to happen, and we have to accept that when it doesn't, we have a role in creating that circumstance. We have gone unconscious. It takes very small tweaks to come back to deliberate and accountable living, being accountable to our own mental health and to our own way we move through our life. It's like you have to be really deliberate and precise in how you set up boundaries around your time, your energy, and what resources you gift to yourself. Okay. The second reflection I wanted to offer you before I go into the rest of the episode, I want you to ask yourself, am I ready to live from a place of comfort, safety, enoughness and of things being spacious and relaxed and more than okay, of being in a place of calmness. Can I imagine that being the way I move through the world? Can I imagine welcoming that into my body? I think that we unconsciously get kind of used to living in a threat state so much of the time, of getting kind of high off of it. And without realizing it, we're moving through all of life in a state of overwhelm. And in our body, it might feel like being high, it might feel like being productive, like we get off on it. But in truth, we are experiencing energetically a sense of danger and threat. Like, I need to act immediately. So I just want to ask you, can I imagine living pervasively from a place of safety, calm, slowness, and not rushing, of plenty, of expansiveness of time, of dead time, of empty air time in my schedule? Can you imagine that? I mean, be curious about what that answer is. There's some part of us that might feel like, oof, that doesn't feel good. That feels a little bit like we're not being efficient. It feels like I'm not being responsible, or I don't know if I want that. That might feel like not good. I don't know. I'm just curious what your body's response to that image is. Because in truth, it's like pretty healthy to live from that place. It's like that's kind of the setting we want for our body and for our stress and for our happiness, is to be kind of like living on that, vacation time, expansiveness. All the same stuff gets done. It's just the way we move through and experience our entire life changes. Our health changes. So I want you to try and welcome that feeling and think of it as normal. Think of it as average and good and responsible. So with that, there are three parts in this episode: the what, the why, and the how, the tools. Part one, the what. Thoughts being what we identify with. I mean, our self-worth becomes something that is unknown to us, or it's based on external variations, and they change all the time and they define us to us. So often this comes with being triggered by things, feeling activated by things outside of us, like people, what they are doing or are not doing, or what people say about us or what they don't say about us, or um, feelings of less than, feelings of comparison, like intense comparison, constant defining, looking for answers outside of us, feelings like I can't do that, or defeatist thoughts like it's too late for me now, or I really wish that was my accomplishment, or I really wish I did that. All of it being constant thoughts of judgment, painful thoughts of judgment. And maybe actions wise, nothing changes. Like actions are completely separate from this inner narrative. But you do find you are motivated to grasp based on whatever the thoughts are, based on whatever external things you are um, activated by. You might find that you are overreaching or over grasping or becoming more desperate in areas in your actions. Part two, the why. We are, comparing machines. Like that is our way of surviving. That's how the brain works. We are constantly categorizing things. And your brain, I think of as like your operating system, but it's not you. Your brain is this machine that helps you move through the world and like not die and be functional. It's how we control, air quotes, control the world and feel safe within it. We make up rules and we give things logic. We create patterns and then we try and quote win based on those rules. We get these assumed rules from our experiences and we're taught a lot of them, but we learn a lot of them by observation and through experiences growing up. Things that cause us pain, things that don't cause us pain, things that give us pleasures, things that don't give us pleasures. And also our childhood experiences reinforce an awareness of the rules of and where we fit into them. So by that I mean our self-worth, where we fall in the ranking of various measures we have. Also our ability to feel in command of our self-worth and feel like we possess ourselves. Like we have a sense of agency and um, a real strong connection to our self definition. And that sense oftentimes can be taken from us during our upbringing. If someone or something violates our sense of safety or our sense of ownership, our ability to be in our own body, especially if it happens at an age when we have no coping skills. So what I'm talking about is some kind of trauma, some kind of really intense painful loss, some feeling of intense powerlessness, maybe it's chronic feelings of powerlessness, anything that made it so we had to train our focus on external values or the rules externally as a means to feel like we were in some shape or form safe because emotionally inside there was no safety. It was only pain or some definition we had of ourselves was violated or rewritten by somebody else. And I think that happens to a lot of people and we don't really realize that it happens. So we start to live what I call from the neck up. It's like we're not connected to the lower half of our body. We're not connected to our gut, to our little mini me, our tiny little like whispering self, our inner self. And I think that's because oftentimes when it's not safe to be in our body or our body is not a safe place anymore, we have to separate from it so we can survive and not be in pain all the time or not be freaking the fuck out all the time. So that's when we start to use it. It becomes this kind of like little car that's an object. It's not us anymore. And we're no longer the driver. We're just like, it's like a tool versus us. And as adults, we kind of forget that that was a change that happened. We forget that we were ever connected to our body and part of our body. Instead, it's like we just get used to living at the cost of ourselves. We live with no inner feedback. And so we're unable to know what we with a capital W want because we can't even hear it anymore. We're just operating based on all of these learned routines, all these learned paths for success or for happiness or for I'm definition wise okay. And we don't even know how to ask, am I happy? Because the narrative is all we hear. The narrative of the computer is all we hear and all we know. And that's all we identify with as us. And that way of living is everything is at you versus for you versus like for me. So I want to invite you to even recognize if that's true for you. And if it is true for you, ask, how can I change this? And how can I grow an innate sense of my own worth, an innate sense into who I am? That's the pivot that needs to take place because I very strongly believe we are two people. We are this tiny, wise watcher, this inner baby you. And then we are this adult computer that learned all the rules, that's constantly like, don't do that, definitely do that. Oh, look over there. Oh, look at the tree. Look at the dog. I like that dog. Do you like this color of brown? It's constantly saying noisy things. And we need to demonstrate with our actions to this tiny little watcher that we are good and we are worth trusting and that we will take care of ourselves and be good to us unconditionally. That's the key. This little inner you is an amazing, joyful child. And that self often gets neglected and ignored and abused by us for a very long time. And it longs to be heard. It longs to be respected and acknowledged and rewarded. and to be able to express itself. This little tiny you needs a voice, and you have to show that little tiny you that you are listening by actually listening. You have to actually listen to that little voice. And the voice speaks very quietly, but very clearly. It's a very specific voice. And so this, I would say, this episode is kind of the beginning of a listening inward practice. If you haven't done that in a long time, this is kind of what I'm inviting you to do. Um, and know that this path, this change of like not identifying with the thoughts, not identifying with external, of like instead listening inward and just saying, like, I'm going to be good to you no matter what anyone says, no matter what anyone thinks, no matter what the world is doing. I'm going to be good to you and I'm going to be kind to you and I'm going to respect you. That takes very consistent, diligent action on your part in a physical way. And you have to be consistent in even the what kind of thoughts you allow in. If you have a negative, mean thought that's like attacking yourself, the first thing you need to do is say, like, it's not allowed. I'm not doing that shit. And you have to be consistent and know that it will take consistent action of like, I'm going to ballpark a month, 2 months. And when you are in that process, it will feel fictional. It will feel silly. It'll feel fake, but it doesn't matter. Eventually it starts to work. And when you are in that process of making a very concerted effort, a very genuine effort, a consistent one, you don't have to worry about forcing it to take hold. You don't have to worry about like, I'm not doing it hard enough and it's not working fast enough. Is it working? Am I doing it the right way? Like it is an organic process. It is an organic shift that is happening from that genuine place. Don't judge it. Don't focus on the process. Just take the actions. And know that if you are supporting this goal purely and you are genuine in that goal, you really mean it, you're feeding that fire with all the right material, with all the right genuine effort, it's an allowing process. It's a walking with your eyes closed in a state of trust. That is what it feels like. And you just have to allow. You have to allow yourself to be genuine. You have to allow yourself to walk in this direction. And the only important thing is meaning it and taking the actions consistently. And honestly, it feels like, who the fuck knows if this is going to work? This feels ridiculous. At the end of the day, though, what happens is you witness you genuinely trying to be nice and genuinely trying to rebuild and making an effort. And what happens is you feel like, I like that person and I trust that person because they've shown me they mean it. For the first time in a really long time, they've shown me they're not whipping me anymore. They're not like punishing me anymore. They're like showing me you matter more to me than all this other bullshit. That feels really, really good to you, to a friend, to anyone. That feels really good. And you start to build genuine self-love. It grows in such a amazing and profound way, but it starts by meaning it. And I think with any self-work, any beginning of a new path in your life, it'll be a combination of just going through the motions aggressively and grabbing tools that are new and foreign to you and practicing them like your life depends on it. And then as you move through it, you get feedback. You get new insight into yourself because you're moving in a new direction and you're trying new actions. The action is essential, but also the experience of newness and feedback is a huge part of it. So just know that like you can't force it, you can't rush it. You just have to move through it as a process and trust that all of these little tiny things are creating a new felt sense of the world, a new knowledge base of yourself and of new tools. And we can only really get that growth through this process of trying. So I feel like so many people, when they're in this like state of I want to change myself and like why isn't it working and like I don't even enjoy this. It doesn't feel good and like I don't even know if I like the things I'm doing. Don't judge it. The judgment layer of am I fucking this up? Is it working? Is the part that exhausts us. The only thing you have to worry about is I'm allowing myself to change. I'm trying all of my best to move through a process of change and know that so much of this is just an opening, it's an unfolding, it's a process of us starting to feel into this little whispering voice and hearing like this resonated with me. This felt true for me. This feels positive to me. This feels like I have grown a new muscle and I'm proud of myself based on that. This feels like something I'm actually proud of because it was hard. All of these are like we're getting new knowledge. We're getting new self-knowledge, even though it feels at times like I don't even know if this is making a difference. Is this making a dent? Who the fuck knows? It doesn't matter because it's not yours to decipher. It is only your job to move through a process in a heartfelt and self-loving manner. And if you feel like I'm being so aggro about my self-work, I'm self-working so fucking hard, come back into a grounded state. I feel like sometimes if we go so hard against a goal, it can feel chaotic and almost like, you know, you've overworked out in some ways. So if you're feeling like that's where the balance is, I would say come back into a reflective, meditative, restful state. It's like we need both. It's like you need to break the muscle, but then you also need to allow the muscle to heal. And I find that when I allow myself that kind of like quiet, restful stage, that's when my intuition it can be even heard, you know? So, with that, I'm going to go to part three, the how, the tools. But first, a brief word from our sponsors. Okay, the how, the tools. All right, the first tool I'm calling flip the script or imagination game. This one is really, it's kind of a mind fuck at first, but it starts to work when you can wrap your head around it. It's really, really effective. I want you to imagine whenever you have that like painful rumination thought, I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay. Whatever your negative rumination thought is, let's say it's I'm a failure. I want you to practice as soon as it occurs, imagining the opposite is true, just like a game of make believe. Whatever yours is, let's try it together. Um, let's say your comparison blip is I'm a failure. Now let's imagine, or whatever yours is, I am incredibly successful. I am incredibly successful in so many ways. Whatever the thing is, you don't have to believe that. I want you to imagine it's true. As if you're imagining that the entire house you're in is like underwater. Like it's a fantastical imagination game. But whatever yours is, let's try it right now. Imagine that opposite truth. How does that feel? How does it feel in your body? I imagine your chest opens a little bit, your shoulders get a little bit broader, your facial expression changes. What is the energy of a person who feels incredibly successful, incredibly awesome and effective, whatever the thing is? That's the tool. I want you to do that in the moment every time you recognize I'm having a painful rumination thought. Don't engage with it to the next one and the next one and the next. This is an exercise I want you to be very consistent in practicing. All right, next tool, know the devil inside. Um, untrue ideas cause all of our suffering. And one of the most common untrue ideas is I have to fix this all, or I have to muscle this with will. And if I can't do that, there's no way to do it. We think often that if we can't figure something out ourselves, then it's impossible. Then it's impossible for us or we're broken, which is false. That is a false belief. And yet it causes suffering for so many people. And I think one of the other things that's common for our brain is we jump from pole to pole. We jump from extreme definition to extreme definition. Whatever your thing is, your habit, I want you to get to know exactly what it is. Identify it. Let's think about it. And if this is easier to do in a journal, let's do it in a journal. But I know, for example, my one of my poles that I swing to is scarcity. That's where I default to in a feeling of um I can't control the situation. That's my trigger. I can't control the situation. There's something very unpredictable in this situation. I immediately go to worst possible is going to motivate every decision I make. What's the smallest I can make myself? What's the least I can ask for? That's not a good way to make decisions, but that's one of my leanings. That's my devil. I lean toward how can I ask for so little and contort myself to have no needs at all. So I want you to identify, just scan your childhood experiences, scan your recent adult experiences. What are the poles that you jump to? What are the limiting extreme beliefs that you lean toward? And I'm going to guess you have some common ones. Where do you tend to go sick, quote unquote? Like, what are your particular thought traps? And they might be in a totally different direction. You might have something that's more like, you know what? I do need all this stuff. Or fuck it. I'm a person that just says, I'm just going to do it anyway. Like, whatever your thought traps are, write them down. Know what they are. Be able to recognize them like a dark figure that walks in the room. Like, oh, this is you again. Just get to know them like these, those tiny records, those like little old records that are, what do they call them? It's a number, 44s. I don't know. Whatever it is, those are yours. I just want you to become very familiar with them because I think a large majority of what we live by are these kind of unconscious defaults. You don't even recognize that you're guiding very long, you know, path altering decisions. Like it's going to affect the like let's say the next decade of your life. We're creating these decisions based on these tiny little old unconscious extremes. And I want you to start to decide things from healed, whole, confident, resourced place. That's the person that gets to call the shots in your life, not the triggered, tiny, small, desperate, clingy, like low hanging fruit self, if that makes sense. And a lot of what happens in this process of self work, of like coming home to like this, I'm motivated by what's best for this little tiny person that lives inside of me. That is a a process of resuming trust. And it feels oftentimes like very uncomfortable and counterintuitive and against our grain. It feels like falling backwards. But at the end of the day, those decisions are much wiser and much more true for you than the fear-based self. And so I think as we kind of move through, first even knowing that that's happening for us and becoming curious about what is more true for us from a safe place, from our more grounded place, we will often arrive at a much more resolute, balanced answer to all the questions we have in our life. It happens by just even recognizing I have to listen in for a different, more true answer to come from within. I hope that made sense. All right, next tool, mental silence. I already kind of called this out, but like know that for things to come through, like really profound, um, just intuition, insight, instinct, we need to have space. We need to have room for nothingness. And I know some people hate meditation. It doesn't matter what it is, but you need to have a portion of your day where it's not filled with content. And by that, I mean podcasts, I mean TV, I mean you having conversations with friends, I mean you talking, you thinking, you ingesting something or other. Like allow for just really empty space. And if you can, if you need, if you're a person that's been through trauma and you need like extra tools in order to do that, I find that yoga is a great way because it is, we're not identified with the brain and you have something in your body's motion that is taking up control away from thoughts. But it is also something that's like, in theory, shutting off an identification with your thoughts. Cool. Next tool, naming. I think one way to really get used to this relationship of externalizing your thoughts as separate from you is naming. It's like quite literally, if you're getting really upset by your thoughts and you're getting really overwhelmed by your thoughts, just start to name them. Like as you have them, like negative comment about my weight, uh, thought about a tree, judging, labeling, um, body feeling. Just call out exactly what category they belong to. This is just having a sense of non-attachment to what's going on in the brain, but also amusement. And I think this is one way of taking the piss out of the thoughts themselves in that they become not you. They are not us. They're like it's clay that we're working on or that we're playing with, we're observing. Cool. The next tool is called hot tooth, which is a term I learned I learned at the dentist yesterday. It's when something has so much potency and pain, like a very sensitive tooth, for example. This is a tool that relates to specifically emotions that for you feel intensely painful, like a raw nerve. And oftentimes it's emotions or feelings or thoughts that are like shame based. Often jealousy feels like this. And whatever they often are so potent that we instantly want to reject them from our conscious mind. These are the ones that we start to like push back. And the reason that that's not good is because then it starts to be a motivator. It starts to be like an unconscious driver. And it's especially the ones that are like icky, super intensely painful, like shame. As soon as you have a feeling of shame or a thought of shame, being ashamed of yourself, I want to invite you to own it and to give yourself a safe language by which to handle it and process it. And one of the ways that I like to do it is recognize what the underlying motivation of why this bothers us so much. And oftentimes it's because it is love. It is the other half of us wanting to reject it is us feeling so strongly um, a desire to be the opposite. It's love. It's we don't want to feel that way because we have so much love. So I'm inviting you to process that feeling out more fully, whatever the one that's hottest to the touch is. And know that it's pointing to either something in you that has love for something, like with jealousy. I have love for this ideal. I have love for this art. I have love for this job. I have love for this goal. It's pointing to something true in you. Or with something that you hate, it's, I long to be a loving person. That's really what's motivating it. These are all maps to where we need a little bit of extra attention and compassion and learning in ourselves. So I want you to invite that, look at it as an invitation to learn more, not something that's damning. Okay, cool. And the next tool is a journal exercise. I wanted to invite you to have a little journaling session with you, a very loving and kind one. This is inspired by a teacher at my daughter's school who asked, "Hey, Mama, how are you doing today?" And I was like, oh, I love being asked how I'm doing. It was such a like rare, lovely treat. Felt so good to be asked that. And I wanted to invite you to ask that. I invited myself to ask this last night in my journal. It feels really nice. I want you to talk with yourself about yourself and ask, hey, me, how are you doing? How am I doing? And just answer that as like a casual friendship might, you know? Um, how is your day? How is your life going? How are you feeling about your life? What are you feeling good about? What have you improved? What is doing better in your life? What do you still want to add some love and fan flames around? And also, what alterations can you make tomorrow? And be kind. Be kind and be like you would with a friend. Be positive, focus on what's positive, be creative, be focused on what you are active in. Um, it's all about creating a flow of energy in a positive direction. So enjoy that journal entry. Um, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'm going to start posting some shorter form content on YouTube. I have all of these episodes on YouTube. If you're not watching this on YouTube now, I invite you to check that out. And before I close, I just want to thank all of my latest sponsors, you individual listeners. I really appreciate the donations. If you have any means, definitely I invite you to make a donation. If not, if you could just share this with someone that it could help, that helps me as well. Um, so in closing, I I want you to be able to see around the thoughts that hurt you. And sometimes I think we just need a little refresher in, oh yeah, these are not me. What am I going to choose how am I going to guide my life if I'm not being driven by a litany of things to do and thoughts? How do I want to live energetically and move through my life timeline wise? Do I want it to be spacious? I want it to be relaxed, comfortable, calm, joyful, spontaneous? Think about it from outside of it. And I think that the way that we will design that process, that dance will be very different than if we're just lost in it, if we're being driven by the routine itself. Routine, by the way, is intensely therapeutic. It's very healing, it's very helpful, it's very grounding. I'm not saying don't have a routine, but don't forget to tune in to the space and say, I'm an animal living on a planet with all of these beautiful trees and animals, and like sense into that and feel what it's like to have nothing to do, nothing that you're supposed to be, no definitions, no words, no labels, just you as a being on this planet. Imagine everything else went away, all of the technology, all of the systems, all of the structures. How do you want to feel? How do you want to feel throughout the day? Do I have the room built into my structure to allow for myself to have that benefit? And am I hearing what I need? Am I able to even hear what little me needs and wants? I send you my love and don't forget to smile.